Hey you, welcome to Selfish Me. I'm Cam, a business psychologist and a proud late bloomer who finally stopped living by everyone else's rules. And this is your space to pause, reconnect, and build a life that feels true to you. Because putting yourself first isn't selfish, it's powerful.
Hello, you. I have a confession. Lately, my thoughts haven't felt sharp. They feel heavy, distant, like there's a space between me and my own mind, as if something is blocking the connection. I can't always reach my thoughts, even though I know they are there. I can almost see them drifting around, just slightly out of reach, moving in the wrong direction. And when that happens, it becomes hard to put into words what I'm trying to say. It's a bit like being on the phone with a friend when the signal is really bad. You keep saying, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" until eventually you give up, hang up, and tell yourself, "I'll call back later," hoping the connection will be better next time and you're not going to be upset anymore. And this isn't new for me. The first time it happened was a few years ago, maybe 3, if my memory is correct. I was sitting in a meeting, listening, or at least I thought I was. I could hear the words being spoken, but none of the information was actually being processed by my brain. I panicked. I remember being terrified that someone would ask me a question and realize that I hadn't been paying attention. And the truth was, I was listening. I just couldn't understand what was being said. At that time, I genuinely thought I was losing my mind. What I didn't know then was that what I was experiencing actually has a name. It's called brain fog. And before we go any further, I want to invite you into a moment of reflection. By the way, I am not saying that you are experiencing brain fog, but I am inviting you to pause just briefly and get curious about how your mind has been feeling lately. There's no pressure to label anything, okay, or analyze yourself. Just notice. We have so much on our mind. How often we check how our mind is doing? So, we will do a self reflection that involves 3 questions as always. But let's start with a little bit of movement. Maybe stretching your neck, releasing the tension that you're holding in your shoulders. Okay, are we ready, ladies? When was the last time you felt mentally present but not mentally clear? You were awake, you were there, but something still felt off. How often do you blame yourself for not being able to focus or remember things instead of asking what your brain might actually need? And if your mind could speak during those moments of mental heaviness or confusion, what do you think it would ask for? There are no right or wrong answers here. This isn't about judgment or diagnosis. It's simply an invitation to listen to yourself with a little bit more compassion. If any of those questions resonated, stay with me. We're going to explore this together. So, when I started noticing that my mind was operating differently, I began paying attention to the symptoms. Trouble focusing, a little bit of a confusion, forgetting things, difficulty connecting the dots, and moments where my words wouldn't come out in the right order, or I wouldn't say, or I would say the wrong thing entirely. And then I had a panic moment, to be honest. My mom had experienced all of those symptoms while going through menopause, and they became worse when she had COVID. Unfortunately, the symptoms overlapped for her. So you can imagine my panic when I thought that I might be going through menopause myself, or perimenopause, which felt more aligned with my age. Either way, none of them sounds great, to be honest, at this stage in my life. I went straight to my GP because I was convinced that is the reason for my brain fogs. That felt like the obvious answer. So I had tests done. I had my hormones checks and also my iron levels because they tend to drop quite a lot. During that process, I've learned that actually hormones aren't really one and done kind of measurement. They fluctuate. So you have to so if you actually want to accurate insight, they really need to be tracked over time, not just captured in a single snapshot. But in that moment, I just wanted to know where my hormones are. And they came up within the norm, and my iron was at the right level as well. So I was confused what was happening. Not long after that, I spoke with my therapist, Kevin, and I told him what was I was experiencing. I was struggling. I felt like I was losing my sharpness, my cognitive edges. I was worried about work, that people would notice, that I would be exposed, and that I might lose my job. He helped me unpack what was happening, and he was the one who gave me the name to my experience, which is brain fog. He explained that this could be due to hormonal changes, and also it could be related to mental overload. And here's the thing, later I read that almost 2 in 5 people experience brain fogs on a regular basis. I was surprised because it meant this wasn't just me feeling like failing, it was something many of us go through, often silently. And at that time, work was overwhelming. My role and my department were going through major changes, and I felt completely lost in all of that. So when he suggested that stress and mental overload could be behind what I felt a small sense of relief. Because if that was the cause, there was a chance it could change. So today, I want to unpack brain fog. What is it? What might cause it? And what research suggests might help. So, what do we know about brain fog? Well, brain fog is often described as a slowing of thought and mental processing. It can involve memory difficulties, slower responses, and challenges with communication, like struggling to find the right words or losing your train of thoughts mid-sentence. And I can absolutely relate to this, especially the slowing of thought and processing on days when my brain felt so foggy. It feels like there is a delay between hearing something and being able to respond, like the information has to travel a long way to get where it needs to go. I also want to acknowledge something important. Some of you listening might experience brain fog in a much more severe or long-term way. I am speaking from my own experience and sharing what I have learned through reading and research. That doesn't mean I'm covering everything, and it doesn't mean this will match your experience exactly. My intention is simply to open the conversation. Because even though brain fog is common, we don't talk about it nearly enough. I came across 2 interesting lenses through which research looks at brain fogs, psychological and physiological. Let's start with the psychological side. Dr. Claire Plumbley, a clinical psychologist and author of Burnout, How to Manage Your Nervous System Before It Manages You, explains that brain fog is often linked to highly emotive experience and chronic emotional load. When we carry intense emotions for a long period of time, it doesn't just affect how we feel, it affects how we think. Dr. Claire compares it to apps running quietly in the background of your phone, draining the battery without you realizing it. Avoiding difficult emotions also keeps the body threat system partially switched on. And when that happens, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for clarity, reasoning, and decision making, doesn't function at full capacity. Your brain might even temporarily disconnect thinking from feeling as a protective mechanism. It's trying to keep you safe. But the result can be cognitive fog. Research shows that up to 80% of people with post-traumatic stress disorder report difficulties with concentration, memory, and mental clarity, all hallmarks of brain fog. In simple terms, when the nervous system is overwhelmed, we move into survival mode. In survival mode is not clarity mode. That can show up as emotional numbing, where you can't really feel, or cognitive fog, where you can't really think. I can relate to the both sides of this, the emotional numbing before burnout and the brain fog after. Leading to burnout, a lot of difficult things were happening in my life. I was under constant stress for a long time, just started numbing my emotions. I didn't let myself feel what was coming up because I was afraid that if I did, I wouldn't be able to cope with it at all. Looking back, that combination of chronic stress and unprocessed emotions likely played a role in the burnout itself. After burnout, my thinking capacity collapsed. Making decisions became overwhelming. Simple tasks like booking a GP appointment, asking for a sick leave, or starting therapy suddenly required guidance and support. What hit me the most was realizing that it wasn't just my energy that was gone. My brain needed recovery too. Now, let's talk about the physiological side. Brain fog can also be linked to physical causes, illness, recovery from infections like COVID, cancer-related cognitive impairment, and for women in particular, hormonal changes. There's a growing evidence that sex hormone, especially estrogen and progesterone, are closely linked to cognition, our ability to think, learn, focus, and remember. And this doesn't only apply to perimenopause or menopause. Hormone level fluctuate throughout the menstrual cycle too. Associate Professor Caroline Gurvich explained that around 80% of women experience at least one physical or psychological symptoms before their period. And hormones directly affects brain regions involved in memory and thinking. Premenstrual brain fog has often been dismissed as women's business, which has limited research in this area. And that doesn't surprise me. As I have already shared this in episode 1, only around 2% of the UK medical research funding goes toward reproductive and menstrual health. So when women talk about cognitive changes linked to hormones, it's often minimized, not because it isn't real, but because it hasn't been studied enough. Now let's break down what estrogen and progesterone are actually doing in the brain in a simple human terms. Estrogen has receptors all over the brain, especially in areas like hippocampus, which is involved in memory, and the prefrontal cortex, which helps with decision making, focus, and executive function. One of the estrogen's big job is helping brain cells communicate effectively. I like to picture it like this. Our brain cells have tiny branches that reach out and connect with other cells. Estrogen helps and strengthens those connection points, sometimes within just 24 hours to 72 hours. So quick turnaround. It's almost like adding extra phone lines between offices. More lines, direct communication. But when estrogen levels drop or fluctuate during different phases of your cycle, after pregnancy or during menopause, some of those connection points shrink back. And that has real cognitive consequences. It can become harder to remember things, learn new things, focus, think clearly. And what's important to know is that these shifts can happen quickly, sometimes within just a few days of hormonal changes. Now, progesterone, alongside estrogen, it has more of a calming influence on the brain and plays an important role in working memory. That ability to hold information in your mind while you're using it, like remembering what you were about to say mid sentence. When estrogen and progesterone are in balance, they are a powerful team. One builds the connection and the other stabilize the systems. But when the progesterone is too high or too low or rapidly changing, you might notice brain fogs, memory lapses, mood shifts, and sleeping disruption, which of course makes cognitive clarity even harder. So here's the simplest way to think about it. Hormonal brain fog is not imaginary. It's not weakness. It's not just mood. It's biology. Let's take a quick look at the menstrual cycle through the lenses of estrogen and progesterone because these two hormones strongly influence how our brain functions. Your cycle begins on the first day of your period and lasts on average around 28 days. During your period, both estrogen and progesterone are low. They can mean lower energy, reduced focus, and what often described as brain fog. The follicular phase, estrogen starts rising. As it does, many women feel clearer, more motivated, and mentally sharper. Toward the end of this phase, testosterone also increases slightly, boosting confidence and drive. Around ovulation, estrogen peaks. This is often when you feel most articulate, socially confident, and cognitively sharp. Then in the luteal phase, progesterone rises and later both hormones drop. And as they decline, you might notice disrupted sleep or lower concentration, mental fatigue, or irritability. It's not random, it's hormonal shifts influencing how your brain is feeling and functioning. And understanding that can completely change how you respond to yourself during the months. Finally, there's one more piece that really matters when we talk about brain fog, and that's time. Dr. Claire Plumley invites us to look at the brain fog not just by what it feels like, but how long it lasts. Because duration can give us an important clue about what our nervous system is dealing with. Short-term fog, hours or days, can come from a sleep loss, dehydration, stress, illness, or overstimulation. Medium-term fog Weeks might relate to sustained stress, grief, hormonal shifts, or poor sleep. Long-term fog, months or more, is often linked to burnout, chronic anxiety or depression, or long COVID, or unresolved trauma. Now, before we close, I want to leave you with a few practical takeaways based on what we have shared today, things that have genuinely helped me navigating brain fog. But before I share them, I'd love for you just to go back to our reflections. Was there anything in particular that came up for you? And hopefully, one of the tips that I'll be sharing can help with that. Number one, start with basics. Brain fog is non-specific symptom, which means it can be linked to many different things. If it's persistent, consider making a GP appointment to rule out things like thyroid issues, iron deficiency, medication side effects, or hormone changes. Sometimes clarity starts with checking the foundations. Number two, track the pattern. If your brain fog doesn't have a clear beginning or end, try tracking it. Journal when it shows up, how long it lasts, your energy level, your stress load, sleep, and how your body feels. Also notice context. Do you experience brain fogs in environments where you might not feel safe or is very triggering for you or stressful? Is that a person or a place or a situation that is triggering your nervous system? When the nervous system is overwhelmed, we move into survival mode and thinking becomes harder. So maybe noticing the context could be a good clue for you. Number three, protect your brain energy. Sleep is not optional for brain health, it's restorative. Hydration matters too. Having similar hours of going to bed and waking up signals to your body this is your resting time. Reduce cognitive noise. Constant input doesn't support memory or focus. I try to listen music without lyrics while working because words are processed in the background and that gives extra load to your brain. Work with your cycle. One thing I'm experimenting with is tracking my menstrual cycle alongside how my brain feels during different phases, just to notice any patterns because awareness creates options and options creates compassion. Before I fully close, I want to share something personal. I found experiencing brain fog genuinely very difficult. It can impact a lot self-esteem, self-identity, and self-worth, and confidence, not just productivity. I think part of why it's been so hard for me is that I've been expecting my body and my mind always be the same, always performing, always sharp, always operating at the peak level. But that expectation is unrealistic because we are humans, not robots. Our energy naturally fluctuates, especially as a woman. Our brains and our bodies changes across the menstrual cycle and for a long time I saw that as a weakness, something negative to push through it. Mostly because the way we work and the world is designed doesn't take our natural rhythms into account. So just take a moment to check in with yourself. And once you know what type of compassion and support you need, try to give it to yourself or ask people in your life to help you with that. Thank you for being here with me today. And until next week.
Thank you so much for listening. It honestly means the world to me. If something from today's chat made you smile, think, or feel seen, share it. That's how our Selfish Me community grows. This podcast is about real voices and reminding each other that we are not alone. We are all figuring out how to do life our way, and you are doing better than you think.